Hello everyone, I hope you are all in good health and today I will be recording the lecture for chapter 6. If you remember at the beginning of the course we said the course is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 tackles the consumer theory, consumer behavior, then we will move to the production side of the story, and then we will move to the markets and different types of markets. By finishing chapter 5, which is what we did over the past weeks, we finished the consumer theory, consumer behavior, how would a rational consumer make rational decisions in the market. Today we will start the part of the producer. How would the producer make decisions related to supply? How would he minimize the costs of production? So, if we are talking, for example, about an economy like the Egyptian's economy, and we are talking about the production side, we would like to know what determines the production capabilities of the country. If we measure, for example, the gross domestic product, which is the total amount of goods and services produced within the Egyptian economy during a period of 1 year, what determines this amount of production that is produced within any country? Usually the production capabilities are determined by the availability of factors of production like land, labor, capital, raw materials. So we are talking about the size and the quality of the labor force, the quantity available of capital stock, equipment, machines, the level of natural resources and raw materials available, and finally the technological level. In order to describe these production capabilities, we usually have an important concept in economics, which is the production function. The production function talks about the maximum amount of output that can be produced within an economy during a certain period of time. So again, the production function shows what? Shows the maximum amount of output produced from certain amount of inputs in a certain economy. From the production function, we can get to understand 3 main concepts that we need to be aware of as economists: the total product, the marginal product, and the average product. When I'm talking about the total product, I'm talking about the total amount of output produced in physical units. For example, if I'm talking about a commodity like laptops, the total product shows the total amount of laptops produced within a certain period of time. Total product usually starts at 0 for 0 units of input. So the production function again shows the relationship between what? Between output produced and the amount of inputs utilized. So if you are using 0 units of the input, you will not be producing any level of outputs. Then when the level of input or labor starts to increase, you expect the total product will start to increase until it reaches a maximum. If you remember in the consumer side, when we talked about utility, we said that we have total utility and we have marginal utility. We said total utility tends to increase when you increase the units consumed of the good, but at a decreasing rate. Here it is the same notion, but we are applying it to the production side. The total product, which shows the total amount of output produced, it tends to increase when you increase the amount of one input produced, holding other inputs constant, but it is increasing at a decreasing rate. Due to what? Due to an important law in economics that we talked about in chapter 3, which is the law of diminishing returns. So this is the total product curve. It is increasing, as you can see, but increasing at a decreasing rate. This means that the slope of the total product, which is the marginal product, is decreasing. The marginal product, again, what is the definition of it? The marginal product of an input is the extra or the additional output produced by one additional unit of the input while holding other inputs as constant. Don't forget that. Marginal is always the additional or the extra output produced by increasing one input by 1 unit while holding all other inputs as constant. For example, we assume that we are holding machines and capital as constant, and we are only increasing one input, which is labor. what will happen? We will find that the marginal product of this labor will tend to diminish or decrease as you continue hiring more labor while holding capital or machines as constant. And we described that in one of the lectures before when we said if I have just one piece of machine and I keep on increasing the units of labor working on that machine, the marginal product or the additional contribution of each additional worker will tend to decrease or diminish because they will find less and less machines to work with. That's why the marginal product curve tends to diminish as you increase the units of labor hired while holding other inputs as constant. In some time, you will find that the marginal product can be increasing at the beginning, but finally it must diminish. It must diminish or decrease when the law of diminishing returns starts to operate. Because as you continue increasing units of labor while holding other inputs constant, you must be faced with a phase that the additional contribution of each worker is decreasing because he cannot find enough capital to work with. The third concept that we can get from the production function, which shows again the maximum amount of output you can get from a certain input, is the average product. What's the average product? It is equal to the total product divided by the total units of input. So for example, if I'm talking about units of labor, as you can see from this table, you can easily calculate the average product as the total product divided by the units of labor. While the marginal product is calculated as what? The change in total product divided by the change in labor. Don't forget that the marginal product is the slope of the total product curve. What's the slope? It is the change in total product divided by the change in units of labor. So you can easily calculate both average product and marginal product if you have the units of the input utilized and the total product you are deriving from this input. We talked about the law of diminishing returns. I'm not going to repeat this. And we said that the rationale behind it is that when you continue increasing any input, not necessarily labor, any input while holding other inputs constant, this input will not find enough of other inputs to collaborate with in the production process, and hence the marginal productivity tends to decrease. This figure illustrates the law of diminishing returns. Don't forget, when you draw the total product curve, it is increasing at a decreasing rate, as you can see from the graph. So that's why the marginal product, which is the slope, must be decreasing like this. There are lots of applications for the law of diminishing returns that you can think of even from real-life applications. For example, disguised unemployment in the public sector. What does that mean? For example, if you have in the public sector lots and lots of employees all doing one task that can be easily done by 2 employees. However, there are 8 employees doing the same task. Here we have something called disguised unemployment. The productivity or the contribution of each one of them will tend to decrease because each one will rely on others to do the task. They might be talking together, socializing, and not focusing on the work process and the work procedures. Another example, for example, if you decided to study microeconomics on the day before the exam and you did not allocate time throughout the semester, you will find that if you allocate all the hour studies in one day, for example, you will find that the marginal productivity of the hour studies tend to decrease. You will not be able to focus properly because the additional or the contribution of each additional hour, if you keep studying for 10 or 12 hours, each additional hour that you allocate, your level of concentration will tend to decrease, so the marginal productivity or your output will tend to decrease. So this applies in everything in real life, not just production processes. You will find that, as I said before, in some few cases, the marginal product will tend to increase first before the law of diminishing returns set in. What does that mean? It means that in some production processes, the marginal product can be increasing at the beginning and then it starts to decrease. It can be increasing at the beginning when there is a minimum amount of labor required to perform the task. So if you only, for example, have one worker on a piece of machine, It could be the case that the contribution or the marginal productivity of the second worker will increase due to the fact that they are able to specialize and to divide the labor in an efficient way. But if you continue hiring more and more workers, like 4 workers on the same machine, they will start to talk together, not focus on work, and hence, in that case, the marginal productivity of each of the additional workers will tend to diminish or decrease. There is a distinction between what we call the law of diminishing returns, which occurs in the short run when you tend to increase one input while holding other inputs constant. Some of you will ask me, what will happen if I increase all inputs together? Meaning that I don't only increase labor while holding capital constant. No, I'm increasing land, labor, capital, all the inputs of production with a certain proportion, say for example with 10%, with 20%. What will happen to output? To answer this question, this is related to the pattern of returns to scale. What do I mean by returns to scale? Returns to scale examines the effect of increasing all inputs on output. This means that we have different patterns to scale that we need to distinguish. There might be constant returns to scale or CRS, decreasing returns to scale or DRS, increasing returns to scale or IRS. What is meant by those concepts? For the constant returns to scale, it is the case when you change all inputs by a certain proportion and output changes by the same proportion. What does this imply? It means that I decided to increase all inputs, say for example by 10%. As a result, output increased by the same percentage, by 10% exactly. When can I have this case? This case usually occurs in handcraft industries like, for example, pottery. When you, for example, you have one worker making some handcraft industries. If you double that and you double the amount of workers and the amount of capital or materials required, you will tend to have double the amount of the handcraft output that is made. So it is usually available in simple industries like handcraft industries, other simple industries. While increasing returns to scale, or sometimes we call it economies of scale, it occurs when you increase all inputs by a certain percentage. As a result, output increased by a larger percentage. For example, you increased inputs by 10%. As a result, output increased by 15%. In that case, you say that you have increasing returns to scale in this pattern of production. When does this occur? It occurs when you allow workers to specialize and divide the tasks more efficiently in sophisticated and large-scale industries. And for example, the car assembly line. The car assembly line goes through numerous procedures. If you decided to double all the amount of inputs, this will enable the workers and the managers to divide the tasks more efficiently. As a result, output will increase by a larger amount due to more efficiency in the production process. On the other side, decreasing returns to scale occurs when you decide to increase all inputs by 10%. As a result, output increases by a smaller percentage than this 10%. When does this occur? It occurs when there are inefficiencies in the production process that results from scaling up production. And for example, I have one factory, I'm operating it, I'm running it, I'm the manager, I can monitor everything efficiently. If I decided to scale up the production to the double and build another factory, which sometimes there could be managerial problems, I do not have the capability to coordinate the tasks in two plants at the same time. So if you have management and coordination problems that result from increasing all inputs by a certain percentage, you can expect that output will start increasing, but by a smaller percentage. In this case, we say that we have decreasing returns to scale. As we said, in economics, we need to differentiate between short run and long run. Usually in the short run, this is the time period where you cannot change all the factors of production. where some factors of production are constant and some other factors or inputs are variable. Why is this the case? Because in the short run, you do not have enough time to buy new equipment, to build new factories, to rent a new piece of land and build a new plant on it. This requires time. So usually in the short run, this is the time period where you can adjust production by adjusting only the variable input, like labor, because labor can be easily adjusted. If you have, for example, an increase in the demand for the goods you are selling in the market, you can tend to make the workers work for 2 shifts. You can increase the amount of labor that you are hiring. If this continues in the long run, you have more flexibility, more options. You can have the ability to build a new plant, to import new equipment and machines and expand your scale of production. So in the long run, there are no fixed inputs. Everything is variable. You can adjust the level of capital and all other inputs in the production process. This is an example similar to the example I've just given you, so I will leave it for you to read at home. Another important concept in economics or in the production that we are talking about is technological change. Okay, technological change can be classified into something we call process innovation and product innovation. The process innovation is what leads to a shift in the production function. What do we mean by process innovation? It occurs when new knowledge improves production techniques for existing products. من اسمها كده process innovation يعني I'm improving the process of production, the production technique. This means that using the existing inputs, I can produce a higher level of output due to technological improvement. This means that process innovation can lead to a shift in the production function because it enables you to produce more output from current amount of inputs. And that's what we can see from this graph. If you notice, you will find that the dotted production function occurs when new technologies have been introduced in the market. As a result, the production function shifted upwards. What does this upward shift mean? It means that from the same amount of inputs, you can afford to produce more output due to the improvement in technological knowledge. On the other side, product innovation, from its name, it occurs when new products are introduced in the market. So I'm not having an improvement in the production process of existing products. No, I'm introducing new products in the marketplace. Like, for example, today's technology that were not available 50 years ago, WhatsApp, Facebook, these are new products and services that have been introduced in the market due to new technology that was not available maybe 50 or 60 years ago. Now, a question for you. Is it possible that within an economy we have a technological regress? What do we mean by a technological regress? An outdated technology, a technology that does not lead to any improvement in the market. Is it possible to have so? Well, this question depends on whether you have a well-functioning market economy or you have market failures, which we have talked about before. If you have a well-functioning market economy, you can make sure that you will never have a technological regress. Why? Because outdated technologies will automatically be derived out of the market using the market forces. They will not be successful, they will not be profitable, so they will be like fired or kicked out of the market. However, if you have market failures, technological regress might occur. What's an example for that? For example, if you have an unregulated company that dumps toxic wastes into a Nile or into a stream, this wasteful process is more profitable for the firm. That's why this kind of technological regress, which harms the economy due to the waste being dumped in a stream, can occur if you do not account for negative externalities that we have talked about before. If you remember, negative externalities involves imposing social costs on the society. So you can have this case when a company dumps wastes into a stream when it is not punished for the social costs of causing negative externalities in the market. يعني there are no taxes for doing such a thing. There are no fines. مفيش غرامات عليهم. So this implies that if you have a market failure where there is no enough regulation of the market, you can have the case where there is a technological regress that harms the society as a whole. And this is the role of the government to regulate the marketplace, to make sure that there are enough regulations, to make sure that this kind of social costs is imposed on the firm. The firm has to pay for it to make sure that it does not do such a regressive technology that harms the rest of individuals in the society. One final concept in this chapter is the concept of productivity. Productivity measures the ratio of output to inputs. What does this mean? We are interested in economics to measure something called total factor productivity. يعني إيه total factor productivity؟ يعني output divided by an index that contains all inputs used in the production process. Labor, capital, materials. We are interested in output per unit of all inputs used. يعني a ratio that measures output divided by an index that measures all the inputs used in the production process. Why? Because we would like to know whether productivity grows over time or not, whether the amount of output that can be produced from all inputs can be increased rapidly over time or not. What would lead to productivity growth? Several factors. As you know, technological advances. Technological advances lead to shifts in production function. This means that it leads to an increase in the ratio of output per units of inputs used. Another thing that leads to productivity growth is the accumulation of human capital. If you have a well-educated labor force, this implies that the amount of output per units of input will tend to increase. One thing that we just talked about is economies of scale or increasing returns to scale. When you increase all inputs by 10% and output tends to increase by more than 10%. This increase, if output, for example, increased by 11%, it means that this 1% is attributed to productivity growth that is due to economies of scale or due to increasing returns of scale. And if you remember, we said that economies of scale or increasing returns to scale tends to occur when you have specialization, when you have efficient division of labor, so the amount of output per units of input tends to increase or grow. So again, productivity can grow due to technological advancements, due to accumulation of human capital, or due to economies of scale or increasing returns to scale. One final concept is economies of scope, which is very similar to economies of scale. It occurs when a number of different products can be produced more efficiently together than apart. يعني sometimes, for example, some software programs, they incorporate additional features because it is more efficient to group some products and produce them together and sell them together as a package. This is called economies of scope, when it is more efficient to group products and produce them more efficiently together. Any software package that has inside it internet security, that has inside it firewall protection. This implies that this package is more efficiently produced together by a software company, and it tends to produce them more efficiently together. If it decided to produce each one alone, it will not be more efficient. It will be more costly to the firm. This is what we call economies of scope. Okay. By now we have finished the required parts in chapter 6. I hope you understand it well. And if you have any questions, you can communicate to our TA Riham by email or to me by email. Thank you very much.